Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for today's Third Thursday virtual program. My name is Lauren Burnham, and I'm the Assistant Director here at the American Swedish Historical Museum. And today we are thrilled to bring you this is a year-long series of virtual tours marking the museum's 100th anniversary. Our goal is to provide virtual learning opportunities to celebrate the centennial with our long-distance community. So thank you for joining us. Today, our curator, Brett Peters, is very excited to share with you a preview of our upcoming exhibit From Taste to Tech 100 Years of Nordic Innovation and Impact. Just a few housekeeping things before we start. We ask that everyone please remain on mute during the presentation portion of the program. If you have any questions, you feel free to put them in the chat and we can address them after or we will invite you to unmute and ask live questions at the end as well. This program is being recorded and will be put on our YouTube channel next week, so you can come back and rewatch anytime you'd like. Yeah, so and I think with that, it is my pleasure to turn it over to Brett. Thank you so much, Brett.
Of course. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Before we start, my name is Brett Peters. I'm the curator here at the American Swedish Historical Museum. I'm excited to be talking to you all today about a topic that's become pretty near and dear to my heart. It is one of our two Centennial exhibitions. Our next one will open in May. This one, Taste to Tech, which you'll learn more about in a couple minutes, is opening on April 25th, 2026. That's in a little over a week. If you can make the in person opening extravaganza, I encourage you to do so. It's going to be a lot of fun. Before I begin, I'd like to give a shout out to a couple people on here. I see John London, I see Nancy Baltz, and I see Jason Tibbetts. These three individuals are, three such people who either donated or lent objects to the display. I won't be going over all of them today, but Nancy, I will be, shouting out the Costa Boda zebra vase that you donated. With that, let's begin, if I can. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Excellent. Can everybody still hear me? Very good. So, today I'm again really excited to be talking to you about From Taste to Tech 100 Years of Nordic Innovation and Impact. Now, the presentation is going to start off roughly with a little bit about the exhibit itself. We're going to go over some of the artifacts that are going to be featured. We're going to be talking about some of the stories and fun facts that are going to be highlighted. After that, we're going to talk about the making of the exhibit itself. Uh, just so everybody is aware, an exhibit is not a short-term project. Typically, a curator or you know whoever is in charge will be working on an exhibit from anywhere between a few years to 6 months. I've done exhibits in a much shorter time frame than that. I don't enjoy doing that. But for this exhibit, we've been working on it for about I've been here almost 2 years, so we've been working on it for about that time period. And I know Tracy Beck, our executive director, had been giving it some thought since I arrived as well. So again, the exhibit is called From Taste to Tech: 100 Years of Nordic Innovation and Impact. Here is what the title wall of the exhibition will look like. Of course, this is just, I just want to highlight that this right here with the icons and the title is what it'll look like. It won't have this orange border. The title wall will be a teal, kind of an off teal color. Now, for the exhibit itself, we worked with Elusive, a graphic design company based in the area, to help us to bring this exhibition to life graphically. So this is actually the logo that they came up with. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It includes a variety of icons that will be featured throughout the exhibition on graphic panels. Of course, we have different individuals, innovations, and events that'll be highlighted throughout the exhibition, including Greta Garbo, Lego, Nordic cinema, Hockey itself is not a Nordic innovation, but there are Nordic hockey players, especially in the area. Sauna, Minecraft, Snoopy, so on and so forth. We'll be kind of getting into all of that today. So the exhibit itself, again, it's a landmark exhibition. The exhibition itself focuses on the last 100 years of Nordic impact and innovation in the United States. Now, the exhibit itself is divided into four separate sections. The first section is going to highlight the era between 1926 and 1949. The second will highlight 1950 through 1974. The third will highlight 1975 through 1999. The fourth and final will be 2000 to the current day, 2026. I'll get into a little bit more detail later on about why we organize the exhibit in this way. But when you do see the exhibit, these different sections will be pretty evident and pretty clearly cut out. So I'm excited to kind of unveil that for everybody on the 25th, but you guys will be getting a sneak peek today. So the exhibit itself, again, is divided into those four categories. The exhibit highlights different stories of different individuals and different innovations. Of course, we have a variety of fun facts littered throughout the exhibition, including this one right here, which is one of my personal favorites. Warner Oland, pictured on the left, a Swede, was the first actor to portray a werewolf in a feature Hollywood film, portraying one in The Werewolf of London in 1935. Another fun fact, Beatrice Ojekangas, a Finnish-American cookbook author, invented the pizza roll. One of my personal favorite fun facts, Charles Schulz, the creator of the famous Peanuts comic strip, was Norwegian. He's pictured here on the left in 1956, I believe, drawing Charlie Brown. On the right is his illustration of Snoopy. Of course, one of the most recognizable and iconic characters from the Peanuts from 1952 through 1954. You can see the different iterations and his evolution there. Now, the exhibit itself features a variety of incredible, never before seen artifacts that have never been displayed at the museum. These include a 1969 astronaut Snoopy doll. This, of course, highlights Snoopy, Charles Schulz, but also the 1969 moon landing. We have a pair of dress shoes, worn by Greta Garbo and owned by Greta Garbo, acquired via an auction company, which acquired it via her estate in 2012. We have here a pair of Ericophone or Cobra phones, designed by the Ericsson Company, a Swedish-based company that primarily made, phones and all of that. We have two. One is Mandarin red, and one is vintage green. They're incredible, and they're incredibly well to look at. We have here an ABBA backstage pass from 1979 from their US and UK world tour. It's displayed in a section about music, and it's displayed alongside a voucher for ABBA cash. It is original. We have here an advertisement from 1957 for the Seventh Seal, an Ingmar Bergman vehicle, and perhaps one of his most influential films and one of his best received films in the United States. We have here a gift of Nancy Baltz, a Costa Boda zebra vase by Vicky Lindstrand. This will be on display in one of the sections in the second kind of zone, where we're talking about Nordic inspired design and the mid-century modern movement. So that's a little bit about the exhibit itself. Now, if you'll bear with me, we're going to talk a little bit about the making of the exhibit now. So again, we've been working on this exhibit for about a year and a half to 2 years now. The exhibit as you can see here, it focuses on food, design, technology, entertainment, and social ideas. Starting in 1926, it kind of explores how Nordic culture shaped the US. Now, it ended up as this. It started off as this. Now, when we first kind of began to think in depth about what this exhibit could be and what it would look like, Tracy invited representatives from other Nordic American museums across the United States to come for a panel at the American Swedish Historical Museum here in Philadelphia to have I believe it was a 2 to 3 day long brainstorming period about how really can we pull off this exhibition? What ideas should we be including? And really, what their opinion was about, what we could do to appeal to as many people as humanly possible. So throughout this 3 day period, we brainstormed a list of about 400 to 500 names, innovations, events, designs, what have you, and concepts as well. Some of them are pictured here. You can see we have a list of about 30 people, films, events, what have you, listed under the section of entertainment, which includes books, music, so on and so forth. Uh, this list, believe it or not, had been whittled down from about, I would say, about 100. So in this presentation, we're going to be talking about what we included and what we didn't include. So you can see here Greta Garbo, Ingmar Bergman, Ingrid Bergman, Stellan Bill, and Alexander Skarsgård. Those are all individuals that we did include. A few individuals that we did not include Will Ferrell, uh, Peggy Lee, the Swedish chef, Sven Nykvist, of course, that was a major omission. Um, Other things that we did not include: Alicia Vikander, Nomi Rapace, so on and so forth. And that's just entertainment. But as we kind of began to talk about what to include and what not to include, we really began to kind of think to ourselves, how do you whittle down an exhibition where every topic imaginable, including film, music, books, food, innovation, technology, science, uh, you name it, we had it. How can you whittle down an exhibit where all of this and more is fair game as a topic? How do you whittle it down to the bare bones, for lack of a better term, uh, while keeping the integrity of the exhibit and what you're going to be talking about? So that became a major question for us as we kind of went through these lists and decided on what individuals, events, concepts to keep and what to table and what to really push to the background. Now, as we considered this, a couple driving things came to the forefront, but largely we really had to consider, what does an exhibit need to be successful as we whittled down this list. Of course, in my mind, there were three very clear, criteria: compelling, clear stories, artifact support, and interactives. So as we went through these individuals and as we decided what to keep and what to table or push to the background, we really use these three criteria to do so. So in the case of Sven Nykvist, for instance, that's a compelling, clear story, but it's a story that could be grouped into another story, one of Ingmar Bergman. We did not have any artifacts to support his story. For instance, if it was the Swedish chef, the story is clear, it's compelling to some people, but not compelling to everybody, and we didn't have artifact support. So, largely, what we kind of figured out is, while trying to whittle down this list and while trying to come up with what we wanted to talk about, we really needed to have individuals represented that were well known, uh, that people who weren't Nordic, people who weren't necessarily, you know, well learned, could come in, or well learned in these topics, could come in and recognize immediately. So another thing became clear very early on as well. Uh, this was an exhibit that was pretty monumental, both in theme and in gravity. How do you organize an exhibition where you have about 100 different topics and 100 different sections to touch on? So largely, with that group of museum leaders in the Nordic sphere, we began to brainstorm, in addition to a list of names, different kind of subsections that we could group these names into: sports, film and cinema, music, food, art, so on and so forth. This became our guiding principle for a little while. And as we kind of touched on our first draft of what the exhibition would look like in terms of layout, this is a pretty uh, rudimentary design that I did very, very early on before we moved to, you know, more in-depth uh, ways of creating layouts like InDesign, for instance. But you can see here that we had originally divided our topics into different sections, uh, like entertainment, sustainability, sports, cuisine, international affairs, technology, play, design, lifestyle, art, and music. Fine, that's all well and good. Uh, if you're organizing an exhibit, that's not necessarily a bad way to go. But we weren't quite there yet. We began to stray from this idea of sections based on sports, cuisine, and so on and so forth, these kind of catch-all terms. And we began to group the topics that we had come up with so far. Ingmar Bergman, Greta Garbo, these different events, people, so on and so forth. We began to think about them in the context of the American home. We began to really think about ways that these individuals impact us on our daily basis, on our day to day. Now, that was great. And we were able to kind of think about Nordic impact in terms of cars, in terms of innovations, in terms of kitchenware, in terms of home decor and design. It really opened up a different avenue for us in terms of organizational schematic. And you can see an evolution here, where of course we still have a movie viewing area, but it's maybe a movie area in the home. It's not quite a living room or a family room. It's more of a man cave, I guess. You have over here a section that would have been designed to look like a modern kitchen, where we would have had uh, Nordic designed kitchenware throughout time. We would have had different Nordic foods on display in the cupboards and on this table over here. We would have had an area where you could watch TV. You could have a VR station where you kind of see people skiing, kind of mimicking the Olympics in a way. We would have had an area that touched on design, Huga. We would have had we would have allowed people to get behind the wheel of a Volvo, quote unquote, and that would have kind of reflected the idea of the garage. This kind of concept was interesting. I think more interesting than the first, which really grouped ideas and themes based on these kind of catch-all kind of buckets. But we weren't quite there yet. Something was still missing. So we had an idea. Instead of talking about these different ideas and themes in different buckets, we decided to talk about it from the sense of a timeline. Now, what we really figured out was missing as a result was the flow, and we thought the timeline would help with this. Instead of having, in essence, you know, different buckets and different sections, you would be able to explore these different themes, these different ideas, different individuals, different concepts through events that occurred in America, from 1926 through 2026. Bingo. We had, kind of the way that we were going to organize the exhibit. What came as a result of this larger kind of breakthrough, and originally we were going to divide each section into one decade. So you would have talked about 1926 through 1936, 37 through 46, so on and so forth. We decided instead of doing that, we decided to pivot towards, you know, looking at these larger events, the building of America, the Golden Gate Bridge, and, the Empire State Building, so on and so forth, World War II, you know, the rise of the American suburb, the moon landing, ABBA, the prominence of IKEA in the 1980s through the 1990s, Nordic cuisine coming to the US with, you know, Minecraft and different innovations in Nordic gaming, Nordic movie and television stars. We decided to group these different things into larger quarter century periods, which you saw earlier: 1926 to 1949, 1950 to 74, 75 to 99, 2000 to 26. So we went from talking about different subsections based on buckets, so art, science, history, so on and so forth, to a home model, to talking about Nordic impact on the US from different decades, to talking about Nordic impact on the US in quarter century periods. This first period highlighted infrastructure, innovation, and World War II. The second, a post war zeitgeist, which largely is, this kind of idea after World War II in America that everything is fantastic, everything is great, but under the surface, it really isn't. To cinnamon rolls and Nordic foods, bridging boundaries, essentially the space race. We go to talking about IKEA, music, and the modern era. We go to talking about conscious living, pop culture, and everyday technology. So, as we kind of thought more about the exhibition, we really came up with these different themes that were kind of, we thought, really, really excellent ways of introducing to a group of people who were very familiar with probably US history and maybe not as familiar with Nordic history. And I'm talking about our general visitorship. Uh, we're now talking about Nordic ideas through this lens. Now, it was an interesting way of doing it, and it's not a way I've designed an exhibit before, but it became very, very clear as we kind of began to drop these different ideas that we had into these different subcategories that we had a winner. Now, something I mentioned earlier is as we were thinking about what individuals to include and what individuals to omit, we were really considering a few different things. We were considering whether their story was compelling. We were considering whether we had artifacts to support their story. And we were considering interactives that could go along with their stories themselves. Now, I refer to these different things. I refer to stories and artifacts largely in my curatorial opinion as an anchor versus a support, which is why you have an anchor here, and an I beam, which is a support beam. You might have, going back to the very beginning of this talk, you might have individuals like Ingmar Bergman, or you might have individuals like Warner Oland. One might be an anchor, one might be a support. That's not to say that these individuals themselves are not important, but one story might be compelling to a larger group of people than the other. Now, that this right here is a major criteria that we adopted as we whittled down that list, whether an individual was an anchor story or a support story. And as we began to consider, you know, the different sections in the exhibit itself, Warner Oland, movies, Charles Lindbergh, Dollar Horses, Greta Garbo, Pinocchio, uh, we began to assign anchors and supports. Anchors and supports. We began to really dig deep and try to figure out what stories were going to be most compelling. So, the dollar horse is pictured there as representative of a theme in our first section, which is largely Nordic culture and innovation as a result of the 1939 New York World's Fair. Of course, that World's Fair introduced the American public as a whole uh, to the dollar horse and introduced them to the smorgasbord, which, of course, kind of uh, is one of the only Swedish words in the typical English vernacular. It reintroduced Orifors and made it a more popular brand than it was throughout the early 1930s and 1920s. Charles Lindbergh, we talk about innovation. We talk about Charles Lindbergh, Kirsten Flagstad, so on and so forth. Uh, Charles Lindbergh we saw as kind of a supporting story. Everybody knows who Charles Lindbergh is. Uh, his story is really compelling, and he was a really important individual. But in this specific section, we figured that movies, so with Warner Oland, Ingrid Bergman, Greta Garbo, we figured they were going to be a little bit more interesting to the general public as they came through the exhibition. We also had more to talk about with them and more artifacts to associate with them. So, part of assigning whether a story or a person was an anchor or a support was the artifact support as well. Now you can see Pinocchio, which is representative of Gustav Tengren, is viewed by us as a support as well. Gustav Tengren, we had an exhibit on him uh, several years ago, uh, but as part of this exhibition, we didn't have enough artifacts or really enough impact that we can measure with him uh, to really make him an anchor. So as you move forward, and we're only going to talk about the two first zones, Zone 1 and Zone 2, infrastructure, uh, innovation in the war that changed the world, and post-war zeitgeist, cinnamon rolls, and bridging boundaries. In this section specifically, we talk about Ingmar Bergman and early Nordic cinema in the U.S. Through the lens of the Vietnam War and through the lens of you know this kind of cultural reckoning that was coming about through the counterculture. We talk about the Americans flocking to the suburbs in the 1950s and early 1960s. We talk about the bunt pan. We talk about the bunt cake. We talk about cinnamon rolls. We talk about Nordic designed kitchenware like Dansk or Husqvarna or Kleifstrom, so on and so forth. And we talk about, of course, the moon landing. So as we designed this specific zone, with all of these different things in mind, we began to again assign whether a story or an individual was an anchor or a support. Ingmar Bergman, of course, and his films were a support. We couldn't tell the story of this specific zone, of this kind of countercultural reckoning that, came out and said, not everything is okay in the US. There is endemic racism. There is a wealth gap. There is so on. There is, so many other things that prevent the US from being great. You can't really tell that story without talking about Ingmar Bergman's films, which really kind of acted as a vehicle for introspection for this generation. The flocking of individuals to the suburbs we viewed as being an anchor story. It was an underpinning story or an undercurrent story that talked about, this countercultural revolution. We talked about this specific theme through the lens of, after World War II, Americans largely viewed everything as being great. They moved to the suburbs. They had more wealth. They could get their own home. But again, looking at Ingmar Bergman and his anchor, not everything was good. And his films kind of, you know, I guess you could say, for a lot of people, drove that home. The bunt cake and the bunt pan we viewed as being an anchor item or an anchor story. That wasn't a story that was going to largely move the narrative. It was a really cool, fun fact, and it's a really cool story. And the bunt cake is, of course, very, very prevalent in our society. But for this larger narrative, we didn't view it as being an anchor story. Nordic designed kitchenware. Again, we didn't view that as being an anchor story. We have a lot of artifacts to support it. Uh, but to the larger ideas in the exhibition itself, it kind of takes a back seat. The moon landing, of course, we viewed as being an anchor story, and we had quite a few artifacts to support that story. But largely, in terms of how compelling the story and narrative is, it's incredibly, incredibly important. Of course, the moon landing is one of those events that everybody across America and across the world sat around the TV to watch or sat around a radio to watch. Many people remember what they were doing that day. So we view that as being an anchor story. Again, as we created this exhibition, going from this idea of, you know, these bucket items to decades to quarter centuries, our main concern and our main reason for indicating whether an a story was an anchor or a support wasn't only how compelling the story was or how many artifacts we had to support, it was the flow of the larger narrative. We wanted a continuous flow throughout this larger story. We wanted to be able to go from each different quarter century without skipping a beat. We wanted to communicate every possible idea we could, but do so in a way that was efficient, do so in a way that was compelling, and do so in a way that had impact. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes at the making of the exhibition. So for the exhibition itself, as we kind of began to consider how we would group these different zones and how we would tell these different stories, it became clear early on that we really, really needed to do something different. Now, traditionally, if I'm sure most, if not all of you, have been to the museum at one point or another, and I'm sure most, if not all of you, have seen our changing exhibit gallery and a temporary exhibition in the gallery itself. Typically, we had two larger modular walls, and the room was kind of organized around those two walls. As we began to think about what this exhibition could be and what it needed to be, and how largely it needed to be designed, we decided to go away from those two large, bulky modular walls. And in kind of this spirit of new beginnings, of course, it's our 100th anniversary and our celebratory year, we decided to purchase a modular wall system that is cutting edge. It came with 20 different walls, all of which were about 8 to 9 feet tall by 3 feet wide. These walls allowed us to break these different zones into different specific targeted areas by interlocking these different walls together. Here's some of the walls up. You can see Frank and I putting those up, but it was a team effort. Lauren was involved, as was Zane Pino, our development associate, John Bowman, our museum assistant, so on and so forth. But we really used these walls to kind of group these different zones and these different impact areas together, and we use these walls as well to create, again, not a narrative flow, but a physical flow throughout the exhibition. We thought that was incredibly, incredibly important to do so. So these walls, actually, believe it or not, guide you throughout the exhibition, and you really have to follow the walls to go through the exhibition itself. So it's kind of cool, and I'm excited for everybody to kind of get an idea for what it is. I'm going to show you a little bit of what we've done so far. I'm going to keep some stuff a little bit secret for the opening itself. Some of our more impactful, um, more interactive displays, I guess you could say. But this display itself, again, our third section, our third zone, focuses on IKEA, the top and pop, and the modern era. The top and pop largely focuses on Nordic bands that either came to the US or impacted the US in some way, shape, or form. They include ABBA, Roxette, Ace of Base, Europe. Now, of course, ABBA, Roxette, Ace of Base, and Europe are all Swedish bands, and they're largely all pop as well. We could have focused on other bands, but we deemed that these were among the most impactful. Everybody knows ABBA, and while not everybody knows Europe, Ace of Base, and Roxette, their different songs impacted the U.S. in an incredible, incredible way, from record sales to how many times it made the Billboard Top 100, so on and so forth. But we have a number of different records on display here. ABBA, The Magic of ABBA. We have Voulez-Vous. We have an Ace of Base VHS from The Sign, their hit single in 1994. You can't see them here, but we have a couple of Roxette CDs. Joyride and Look Sharp specifically from 1988 and 1991. I believe Look Sharp was 1988. Joyride was 1991. We have down here a couple of Europe vinyl records as well. The left, the leftmost one is Rock the Night, 1986, and of course the Final Countdown, 1986 as well. The impact of these two songs, of you know, um, I apologize. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name of the second song. The Final Countdown is nothing short of monumental. The Final Countdown made the Billboard Top 200. It sold, I believe, over 13 million copies in the United States, and it's still used today at sporting events. People who play Guitar Hero and Dance Dance Revolution, they'll find the Final Countdown being one of the most popular songs. One of my personal favorite artifacts that we have on display in this section, I mentioned earlier, is an ABBA behind the scenes backstage pass from a U.S. and European tour in 1979. It comes with an ABBA cash voucher. So these are both from 1979. They're vintage. They're very, very cool, and they are part of the collection. So it's really great to kind of highlight them in this exhibition. Now, for more looks behind the scenes, something that we do focus heavily on in that section that we talk about uh, post-war angst and the countercultural revolution is, of course, Ingmar Bergman and his films. Over on the left, we have a lobby card. A lobby card is essentially the earliest way that that movie productions and theatrical productions, movie studios advertised their movies. A lobby card could be found in a hotel. It could be found in a movie theater. Largely, they were early ways of, essentially a bookmark or something like that. It's something that you could take with you. It's something that advertised these films prior to the coming attractions becoming mainstream. In the center, we have a lobby card, and it's large, from the movie Shaman or Skaman or Shame. On the far right, I mentioned it earlier. We have an original 1957 advertisement from The Seventh Seal, perhaps Ingmar Bergman's most famous and influential film. We have down below some Swedish fish. These are not real Swedish fish. These are molded Swedish fish that my intern molded and then spray painted. Now we do have to lighten them up in color and give them a little bit of a look of shininess. But we do talk as well in this section about Swedish fish. Something else we talk about in the exhibition in this larger zone is Jarlsberg cheese and food. We talk about cinnamon rolls in this portion, as well as the bunt pan Swedish meatballs. Jarlsberg cheese was invented in Norway, became popular in the United States in the 1950s, 60s, 70s. It's still popular today. But we talk about that alongside the Ostehøvel cheese slicer, which was invented in Norway I believe in 1925. It became mainstream in the US in the 1960s and 70s. Now, that's the behind the scenes of the exhibit in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed this talk. Before I open it up to any questions you may have, I just want to give a little bit of an idea as well that these artifacts that you saw here, another important way that we kind of got this exhibit up and running were calls for objects. A call for object is something a museum does when it's looking to collect uh, either a certain item or a certain type of items. For us, we were looking to acquire a variety of items that spoke to these monumental ideas, themes, and individuals. Now, there were certain items that we had gaps in our collection. So, whether it was movies, specifically mid century movies, whether it was music in terms of ABBA, Europe, Ace of Base, so on and so forth, whether it was military uniforms, something that was huge and a huge, huge thing that people that are visitor base and individuals that don't interact with us very often. A lot of individuals donated uniforms from World War II, uh, thus building out our World War II collection, which had been relatively bare. So I thank everybody who donated an item to our collection, donated an item to the show, or put an item on loan to the show. We really appreciate it. Without you, this exhibition wouldn't have been possible. And a few of the items I'm excited to say are anchor pieces. So you will see that in the exhibition itself. But again, I hope this gave you an idea for what we were thinking uh, as to who we omitted and who we highlighted, how we organized the exhibition, and how we went about doing so in a way that was compelling and efficient, and of course, how we collected for the exhibition itself. Now, at this point, there will be a digital guide that acts as a companion to this exhibition. Any individuals that we didn't mention in the exhibition in person, some individuals will be mentioned on this digital database, like Sven Nykvist, for instance. But there are other individuals that we do mention and other events that we do mention that we don't mention in the exhibition. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brett.
Yeah.
That's great. It's clear that a lot of planning, a lot of thought went into this. It was a huge group effort, as you mentioned, both from staff and from the brain trust that was assembled from the other organizations to come together and really kind of think through in a very meticulous way how this could best be presented. So thank you for all that work. All right, so it looks like we're going to open it up to questions and comments. It looks like Bill Eaton has something in chat. Wisely, the exhibition seems to have been pulled together top down, reviewing the century, other museum directors' history, etc. Are there examples of things in the basement collection that just forced their way into the exhibition? I'm assuming he means maybe some things in our own collection.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, Bill, that's a great question. And yeah, we really viewed this as a top-down project, uh, as opposed to being bottom-down. So for everybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, when I'm referring to top-down, that's essentially uh, viewing the story from the larger lens, as opposed to focusing on different individuals and small stories first. We focus on the big things and then whittle our way down. So as for items that in our collection that really just force their way onto display, there's a number of things. I mean, we have a number of Aurifors pieces on display, including a pearl diver vase by Vicky Lindstrand. A pearl diver vase was featured in the 1939 World's Fair, so this one is not that one, but it's representative and it's from the 1930s. We have a number of other pieces from the 1930s on display as well. We have, I would say, a number of other pieces on display from our collection, a couple of dollar horses, which kind of, harken back to that World's Fair idea. We have, let me just think, we have we have items that refer to the Finnish, and I guess you could say larger Nordic workforce in at Henry Ford in Detroit, Michigan, on display. These items, which include parts from a V8 engine um, and parts that were manufactured by a Swedish company for Henry Ford, are will be on display. These are items that have not been on view for about 45 to 50 years, but they've been in our collection since, to my knowledge, the 1930s, 1940s. But they largely speak to the Finnish participation in building cars for Henry Ford, whether it was the Model T or so on and so forth. So other items that we just couldn't not display. I mean, it was largely Orifors, the Henry Ford. It was largely our Marimekko dresses. We have three distinct Marimekko dresses that will be on display from the 1960s, specifically 1967. They were on display several years ago in our Marimekko exhibition, but we couldn't talk about Marimekko in this exhibition and its impact without highlighting those three pieces. Uh, as far as that goes, there weren't very many other items that forced their way into the exhibition. There were a couple of Swedish American line items, including a couple menus, uh, but there wasn't anything that really screamed that it belonged in the exhibition, which was a problem. And that's part of the reason why we put out this call for artifacts to really support our collection and really, I guess you could say, deepen it.
Try that again. Take two. Thank you very much, Brett. Wonderful. Anything else? Feel free to unmute, ask a question. Are you curious about something you saw? A topic maybe that you know of that isn't
Yeah.
included thus far?
Or if there's a topic that, I didn't mention that maybe is in display, and if you want to find out, I don't bite.
Well, I think we've just really whetted people's appetites. I think they're
Cool.
excited to get in the room and to experience things. And as Brett mentioned in his presentation, if you're familiar with our layout of our gallery, it's going to be very, very different this time because we have these new modular wall systems in place. So it just will be a total different sensory experience when you walk in. And that being said, I would just want to share this with everyone. We are having our exhibition opening experience next Saturday, the 25th, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. And we are going to have so many amazing activities. So, obviously, the focus will be on seeing and experiencing the exhibition itself, but we are going to have live music. Almost every room of the entire museum will have some sort of engagement activity. Swedish Candy is going to be here giving out different Scandinavian candies. Nothing Bunt Cakes, if you're familiar with that chain, has generously donated a large sample and variety of cakes for us to try. Jeffrey Miller Hospitality Group will be doing four different Nordic food stations. We'll have a Lego station for all of us adults to play with because we all have to take time to be creative. We're going to have a Marimekko inspired screen printing activity, as well as watercolor activity based on the illustrations from um, why did his name just fly out of my head?
Pinocchio,
Uh,
Gustav Tengrid.
Gustav Tangrid, thank you. So we will have, it'll just be a really engaging night. It's going to be a lot of fun. We just really encourage people, if you haven't already got your tickets, definitely reach out. This is going to be a very interactive and live and different experience than we've had in the past. So, of course, Brett will be on hand to provide any further information and tours for anyone who wants a walkthrough of the exhibit that evening. Yeah, so we're very excited. Hope to see everyone there. I just want to thank you again for joining us today for the lecture. Next month's Third Thursday program will be with author Jorgen Flood as he presents a fascinating look at Norwegian history, just in time for the celebration of Norwegian's Constitution Day, 17. Mai. If you're interested in learning more about our upcoming program or becoming an ASHM member or ways to support the museum during our 100th anniversary, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to discuss that with you and chat. And yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you all for attending today's program, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.